The Kenya's president has finally rejected the finance bill amidst mass protests. What is your take about Kenya for now?
In a situation which the president declines to sign a bill into law, it shall indirectly or automatically become law after a total of 14 days or 7 days respectively. Mark the word respectively. Yes! But now, before I talk about the situation in Kenya right now, this is how this bill shall evolve through this span. As it is provided by the law, continue. If the president declines to assent to a bill, he can send it back to parliament for repeal or total withdrawal. Yes! In case of amendment, the bill should be accompanied with a memorandum on specific clauses he wants amended. Yes! If the president does not return this bill back to parliament, the Finance Bill 2024 will automatically become law after the lapse of 14 days. And as it stands right now, continue. The parliament is away for a short recess or break, which begins on June 28, 2024 to July 22nd, 2024. What does this mean? This means that members of parliament are going to be out for 24 days. Jesus! And therefore, the proposed finance bill legislation will automatically become law, having crossed the 14-day threshold mark. And allegedly, continue. The president wrote back to parliament proposing that the bill be deleted. And now the parliament is away and the bill has not yet been signed. So, if by any chance parliament is recalled to effect the withdrawal before the lapse of the 14 days, Kenyans will be victorious. Contrary to that, this is law to be, all factors included or avoided as explained comprehensively in the Kenya's Constitution Article 115, all through clauses 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6.
What do you think is the cause of this anarchy between the Kenya's government and the people?
This is because there has been no link between what the government needs and expects and what the common citizen needs and expects in case any situation of working together was to be realized. So the issue here is people feel that the government is doing directly the opposite of what the citizens expect from it. And since there is no sufficient and comprehensive communication and explanation from the government about the financial policies that they want to implement, continue. The citizens ended up understanding that whatever the government is trying to do is doing it with arrogance. So the truth is that people have to pay taxes in one way or another if the government is to survive. But again, the government cannot survive without the people, since people are the ones who pay taxes. And people are the ones who bring up the government into existence through elections. And therefore, the people are the bosses to the government, not the other way around.
And do you think Kenya is in such a bad state?
It is up to any person to analyze it independently and understand the situation independently. Because currently the Kenyan government has borrowed and still borrowing a lot of money. And the foreign debt in Kenya is currently equal to about 70% of the GDP. There is no clear roadmap on how to close the gap between what Kenya is producing vis-a-vis what Kenya is borrowing. Because already the previous taxes in Kenya under the current regime has not necessarily reflected to development projects in the country. Yes! High taxes that is supposed to help offset the previous debts instead goes into corrupt pockets. And to make matters even more draconian is when the more Kenyans pay more taxes, the more Kenya keep borrowing. So here the citizens clearly don't understand where the taxes are going. And the government looks like it doesn't care to explain. Jesus! And therefore, this resonates to violation of the Constitution of Kenya as highlighted in Section 2D, where it talks about good governance, integrity, transparency, accountability, and D, don't forget, sustainable development.
But are Kenyans ready to pay taxes?
Kenyan citizens will surely volunteer to pay taxes wholeheartedly without being pushed to, if only there is an end result. Yes! And the end result is when you create jobs for the rising number of youths, rise development projects, including infrastructure, improve security, eliminate corruption, improve schools, healthcare systems, and other social amenities. In other words, Kenyan government should create a prodigious environment for socio-economic factors that can thrive and lower the cost of living. Any citizen in any country can definitely pay taxes when government adheres to what I have just said and what I'm telling you right now. Yes! But remember, this high tax finance bill in Kenya is coming amidst hard life. Most people cannot afford food. Most young people have no jobs. Others have been fired from their jobs. Most people have expensive health conditions. Most businesses are going down because of unfavorable economic conditions, high taxes being among them. And therefore, most people in Kenya feel like there is no common agenda between the Kenyan people and the government.
Why do Kenyans think that the government has no agenda with them?
Look at it this way. Though some of the government directives in the financial policy were allegedly dropped, you can still look at it in its original form as follows. Continue. Most youths in Kenya have no jobs, but the government tells them that if you are 18 years and above and you are still in your parents' house, you must pay 300 Kenya shillings tax per month. You have no job, or maybe you have been fired, but the price of bread is being increased. Motor vehicle circulation tax is up, but also the price of fuel was already up. Price of spare parts and maintenance is up due to high taxes in the country. And the country is still in the same stagnated state in the past 2 years and in the next 3 years. Yes! So the problem is still not about taxing people. The problem is that what is the end result? Where are we heading? Are we heading somewhere promising as a country? Or it is the opposite? The situation here now looks ridiculous, and moreover, the Kenyan government is justifying its high taxation move by saying that, look, we are doing this because we are paying the debt and covering and repairing the damages that were caused by the previous regime. So this looks like the government is running its activities on blame game by blaming the previous government as a cover-up to do whatever mess that they want to do now. So the Kenyan people cannot buy this anymore.
And what is the character of Kenyans when it comes to political atmosphere?
Kenyans from previous generations, apart from the Gen Zs, have a tendency of changing tune so fast and being led by emotions. And because of this, the regime in power always easily finds loopholes that they can use to manipulate the citizens. And I think this tax being imposed on Kenyans is not necessarily permanent, but it is rather a political card or political game being played so that when it is approaching towards the next general elections, these taxes shall be suddenly removed or amended to favor the common citizens. And immediately there shall be a sudden public praise and applause, again praising the government about how they have finally listened to the people. Then after voting them in again, the government goes back to continue from where they stopped. And that is by things like introducing high taxes again. And this is a run around circle that most governments always put in order to keep a common citizen at the same point. Yes! But this trick may not work with the Kenyans Gen Zs because this is a rare clone of citizens to be handled in Kenya. They cannot be fooled easily.
Can you please describe the Generation Zs in Kenya?
Yeah, the Gen Zs is the generation which is extremely knowledgeable, extremely exposed. They live with us millennials and other previous generations, but they are totally in a different world. They are much smarter if you compare them with previous generations at that age. Most importantly, this is a generation that had stayed away from politics. They had stayed away from tribalism. They had stayed away from public responsibility for a very long time. But they sat down and said that, wait, why is life pushing us to extremes in this manner? Because they realized that some of the policies implemented by the government are affecting the Gen Zs in one way or the other, directly or indirectly. That is when they said that, look, something needs to be fixed in this government. That is why this generation is now taking responsibility to say that enough is enough. Remember, the Gen Zs are the soft life generation. But if they came out to protest against what you see going on in Kenya, then just know that there is nothing more softer in Kenya right now. And believe me, in the next general election in 2027, 3/4 of political seats in Kenya shall be taken up by the Gen Zs and millennials because of absolute solidarity that they have. And this will happen if older generation don't play their game of chess well.
Is there any positive roadmap for Kenya from what has been happening?
Of course, yes.
Continue.
We as Kenyans are now moving from one political paradigm to the other. We are moving away from days when leaders were being elected, identified on tribal grounds. We are moving away from days when political manipulation, political silencing, and framing was the order of the day. We are moving away from days when corruption used to be common phenomenon while citizens were watching helplessly. Kenya is now transforming into a state which Kenyans can fully exercise their rights as provided under Article 37 on the Kenyan Constitution, which states that every person has a right peacefully and unarmed to assemble, to demonstrate, to picket, and present petitions to public authorities. This is gradually leading us to a new dawn in Kenya.
Continue.
Remember, the Gen Zs are now ready to enter and take up political space in Kenya.
Okay. Do you have any numbers that can bring your point home?
Yes. Before the last general elections in Kenya,
Continue.
22.1 million Kenyans registered to vote. Around 8.2 million Kenyans registered but they did not vote. They abstained. Around 5.1 million Kenyans who were eligible to vote never even bothered to register to vote. So generally, you find that 13 million Kenyans never voted. On the other hand, the president was voted with 7-point-something million votes.
Continue.
What does this show you? This shows you that the 8-point-something million people who registered but never bothered to vote and the 5-point-something million voters who were eligible to vote but never registered were more than enough to decide their own kind of president that they wanted. The 13 million is also the same number that can be able to bring down the person that they don't want and bring up the person that they want in the next general elections. And with the rise of the Gen Zs, the government needs to be absolutely careful because they now have a checkmate.
So, what is your conclusion?
This is my conclusion. A political system in any country must be in the right trajectory if business is to be meaningful and profitable to any businessman and business lady in that country. If living standard is to be excellent in that country. If cost of living is to be understood and affordable as you contrast it with the tax paid and so on in that country. And this can be done by amputating thuggery from politics. Rise of idea of dialogue. Exchange of ideas and public participation before government going ahead into implementing something. Focus on development. Fight corruption and so on. Kenyans are protesting against the government's hardline stance on controversial finance bill policies. The government, on the other hand, is playing chess against its people. Martin Luther King Jr. once said that every man of humane convictions must decide on the protest that best suits his convictions. But we must all protest.
This man!
And in Kenya, the struggle continues.